Right, we'll get started, if that's okay. Right, come to order, please. I'm not banging my hammer at all. Right, welcome to this Executive Cabinet meeting. Just a quick reminder, if you're speaking towards your microphone, make sure you do so everybody can hear you clearly and you don't obstruct your mouth. If anyone lip reading can understand what you're saying as well. First item, is there any apologies for absence, please, Nina?
None received, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Next item is the minutes of the meeting dated the 12th of December, which you've got in your papers. Someone want to propose those? Thank you, Councillor Morward. Seconded by Councillor Lowe. Thank you. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. They're passed. Any public questions received?
None received, Chair.
Thank you, Nina. The first item is Councillor Peter Wilson. Item 4, the draft. Oh, sorry, I have. Thank you, Peter. I have missed declarations of interest, so rushing through at 90 mile an hour. Any declarations of interest for this meeting, please? No. Thanks, Taz. Right, there are none. Back to item 4, the draft 25-26 budget update. Councillor Peter Wilson. Give Taz a post-its back, please.
I presume you're doing that deliberately, just to make sure they were on the game. Yeah, legal officers, make sure that you missed
yes,
that deliberately.
Yes, test.
Yeah.
Shh, don't tell them.
It was passed in flying colours. Right. Yes. So the draft budget, as members would have seen, the papers. We obviously go in, have a consultation exercise to undergo before we actually go back to council in February and deliver the budget. So this is what the headlines that we're going to consult on. So you can see that the report proposes a council tax increase of 2.99%, which is again in line with what we've done in previous years. And that's obviously given the situation that we have in relation to making sure we have enough revenue coming into the council. So even with that, I would refer members to the paragraph, I think it's 12 on the report, which highlights where that puts us in terms of our council tax rates. Sorry, 19 even, not 12, can't read. And we are still the second lowest rate council tax in Lancashire. And I think that's an important point, that we set the premise of what we're delivering based on a very, very low council tax rate. And I think that's something we should be proud of in terms of what we deliver value for money for our residents. So what do we actually propose in this budget? Well, with that small council tax increase, which equates to about 12p a week for a Band D property, and with the second lowest council tax in Lancashire, we still have an ambitious programme which matches the priorities that we set out in November's corporate plan. And as you can see in the report, it outlines where those priorities are. So it's about housing, it's about green and sustainable communities, about an enterprising economy, and safe, healthy and engaged communities. And under those headlines, we have some significant investment areas in the capital programme in particular. So we can see that we've committed a significant amount of money, 837,000 for accommodation for larger families who are homeless. And as we all know, members in every ward know, people struggle with housing and struggle with housing need. And in particular, our temporary accommodation such as Cotswold is not the place for families to be, and therefore these new units which will be delivered will be a significant improvement. So that is a major step forward in the right direction in terms of our delivery. And on top of that, we continue to look at improving access to social housing. And then in the green agenda, again, there is continued work going on there in terms of the improvements in schemes that we do. We had another tree giveaway, of course, at the weekend. But the big items there that it lists are the improvements to Astley Hall and, of course, then the money that we're spending on the new food waste collections, which again is a significant addition to the capital programme. On the economy, as always, we continue to look to bring jobs into the area, and we've got the business grants programme, which is sort of a £330,000 programme, just over £200,000 there on the local plan, which again is essential in order to ensure that we have sustainable growth throughout the whole area, as well as housing, of course. and the destination management plan. And then the biggest ticket item of all is the town centre work that we're going to be undertaking this year, and that's obviously a huge sort of £44.5 million project, so that's going to take up a lot of time as well as money. In the communities section, again, we've got more money going in terms of delivering supporting people who struggle with cost of living, and also supporting the voluntary sector, as well as the significant, again, big investment item in the leisure centre, which is much needed in order to refresh the leisure centre, but also make it more suitable for what people actually need and want, because the key thing with that is that's an investment for a future benefit, which is not just to make it sustainable in terms of leisure, but to actually get more people in, to increase the income stream we get from the leisure centres and improve the offer as well. So it's a big capital programme, it's £60 million. It, as I say, addresses a number of those key priority areas that we set out in the corporate plan, and the budget makes sure that while we're doing those big investment items, it's business as usual across other council services. So we're not seeing and we're not putting forward cuts in frontline services. We are continuing with a number of our existing schemes, and we've got to make sure that obviously it's sustainable, because while we balance the budget this year, and it clearly highlights that in the report that the budget is balanced this year, obviously we've got to plan for the future, and we can see projected deficit in the following financial year of 1.9 million. So again, it's still a huge challenge. So while this year is balanced and we can quite rightly talk about what we're doing, obviously the challenge still remains for the year after. Now, as with nearly every budget I think I've delivered since 2012, which now sounds a long time ago, funding is still a massive challenge, as we all know. We've got a new government that's come in as yet, and probably understandably given they've only been there 6 months, but as yet they haven't got to grips with local government funding. We are still on a one-year settlement, which is frustrating because it makes forward planning for your medium term very, very challenging. We have no clarity on what's going to happen in terms of a fair funding review. We have no clarity of what's going to happen on business rates. We have no clarity in terms of those other one-off sort of grants that we've received in the past. So it does make it very, very challenging. The government have said they're going to go to multi-year settlements. They are going to do the fair funding review. They are going to review business rates. But I think, as Neil quite rightly pointed out early on, that's a hell of a lot of work to do in 12 months, and therefore we've got to face the reality that not all this may be done as we sit here this time next year. Hopefully there will be some more certainty, but as yet it isn't there, and that's why in some of those figures there, for example, we've not included the business rate pool because we don't know if it's going to exist after this year. We've not included other incomes that currently come into the council because, again, we don't know if it's going to exist next year. We hope something will. In an ideal world, it'd be even better, we'd get more money, but we've got to be realistic. So the scale of the challenge is big, but the biggest factor in all that is the fact that we just don't know where the money's, where those income streams are coming from, which makes forward planning, as I say, very, very difficult. But overall, the picture is still one of strength in terms of Chorley, because we continue with our investment programmes, we continue to be ambitious and invest significant amounts of money throughout the borough. We do balance the books, we don't make any frontline service cuts, and with what I would say is a reasonable ask of most people, although I accept some people struggle, but a reasonable ask of most people for an additional 12p a week on average to continue with this work and continue with this programme, I think still provides value for money for local residents. And therefore, happy to propose this draft budget, which, like I say, will be consulted on, and we'll come back next month to formalise and vote on it.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any questions anybody's got or comments? That's all? No? Just a quick comment from me. I did attend the call the other evening with Jim McMahon, the local government minister, around a number of items with LGA facilitated call. He was on that call talking about this multi-year proposal, which they are confident they're going to bring forward next year. They just couldn't do it this year because obviously they got elected in the summer, and therefore it was too much of a rush. They were just trying to get money out this year, was the way I think he phrased it, and therefore they are very hopeful they'll do that. So I think we'll see things emerging through this year around that, which is desperately needed. We do need that multi-year funding arrangement and some clarity to be able to plan moving forwards. So I think that will be welcome. No questions still? in that case, Peter's made the proposals documented in paragraph 3. He's proposed that. Somebody happen to second that for us, please? Councillor Murray, thank you. All those in favour, please show. That's carried. Thank you very much. Right, we move on to item 5, which is again Councillor Wilson, and is the associated fees and charges that go with that budget. And there are a heck of a lot of recommendations. I'll let Peter run through those. Thank you.
There are a significant amount of recommendations. I'll try and briefly go over them because I think a number of these have been discussed and rehearsed, certainly with some of the, well, with the members in this room, but for the benefit perhaps of those who haven't seen it before. The general approach to fees and charges is to largely increase the majority of fees and charges in line with the inflation rates. There are one or two exceptions to that, where the increases are either just slightly more or slightly less, which are outlined in the report. But the general principle is to make sure that fees and charges increase, because what we'll find, and we'll find it with one item at the end of the report, is if you don't increase them, then falls behind the actual cost of providing that service, and then you have to do a bigger increase, and suddenly that's a lot more a difficult decision. So the idea is to increase them gradually to make sure that they cover the cost of providing the service. So this, for example, the service charge at Strawberry Fields, the proposal there is to be going up £1 per square foot. We can see the increased leisure fees and charges, again in line with September CPI. Rents, again, at all council-owned housing, the extra care properties of Primrose and Tatton to be included in that. Again, that's a rise of 2.7%. Cotswolds, separate to that, again, to be increased, both the rent service charge with inflation and the personal charge by a slightly higher rate of inflation, which equates to about £1 a week. The other proposal is garden waste. This is always obviously an issue that's perhaps of some concern, but the proposal is to increase garden waste by £2.50 for the year. So that takes it from £37.50 to £40 a year, which is, again, as you can see, I think it's on point 33. It gives you the details there of that proposal, but also shows where we sit in terms of Lancashire authorities. You can see that at £40, we are pretty much bang in the middle of what all authorities set. So, again, I don't think it's a hugely unreasonable ask, but at the same time, I'm conscious that it went up last year and it's proposed to increase again. So we do have to be very aware of that and the impact that may have on people who do have the grey bin. So it's not something we can just continue to use, but it's something that we think is a reasonable ask for this year. The proposed charges for Astley Hall, they're just really sort of small tweaks to the current charges, probably simplifying it if nothing else. We then look at covered market. We're seeing there a 10% increase in market fees, but that's the point worth making with that is while that sounds, is a percentage-wise, is a bigger increase than inflation, the market rates haven't gone up for over 10 years. So I think when you look at the inflation rates over that period, we're still, even with the 10% increase now, we're still way behind in terms of if we'd kept it at the same rate as the 2014 rate. So it is a slightly bigger increase, but again, I think it's a reasonable ask when you actually look at the numbers. And then we're looking at car parking as well. There are proposed changes there, both to short and long stay car parking, which, again, I think still leaves a position where it is very, very reasonable rates of parking in Chorley. So, for example, if we take the short stay car parks of 1 hour free and currently £1 for 3 hours, we're proposing to have still 1 hour for free, but then £2 for 3 hours. And it's similar in the long stay. We still keep the free period, but we increase from £1 to £2 for 4 hours, and then from £3.50 to £4 for all day. So I think those measures, just looking at those two, again, it is percentage-wise a more significant increase, but in actual financial terms, it still leaves parking in Chorley very, very cheap compared to our surrounding towns, and certainly our bigger towns that we neighbour. And then the other proposal there is the changes, the introduction of new charging on car parks that we don't currently charge at. So we've got 4 there: Sandham Street, Holgate, Ackhurst and Yarrow. And again, what we're seeking in this report is certainly for Hallgate and Yarrow is the in-principle agreement, because we do recognise that any form of charging could have an impact on current users. It could displace some people who park on the street rather than on the car park. So we need to make sure that highways are aligned with our ambitions, that we can work with them to make sure that we don't cause a problem somewhere else, and that Office, when it is introduced, it's introduced in consultation with local users and communities. So, as I say, that implementation isn't going to be immediate, but it's about the principal agreement to actually charge in those car parks. And as it says in the report there, that brings in quite a significant income to the council. So in terms of what I proposed in the previous report about the budget, this is predicated obviously on these fees and charges being introduced. And then finally on that report of note is the cemetery charges. And again, this is an example of what I referenced at the start of my remarks, which is when you don't increase the charges for a number of years, it falls way behind the actual cost of providing that service, and then you need a bigger increase. So there are some in there that obviously increase because we're going up to what's the average for Lancashire, which we think is a reasonable charge, and will hopefully make sure we cover most of our costs of providing the services. But obviously it's a slightly bigger increase in inflation to what I referred at the start. So with that in mind, Chair, I think that's probably hopefully the fairest way I can summarise that report, but obviously happy to discuss anything in more detail.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any questions or comments on any items in that fees and charges report? Councillor G.
Thank you, Chair. Seeing I've sat in this chair, which is the leader of the Conservative Party's chair, I thought I'd say something. I'm more than happy with what's happened there. I think the charges are, I can use the word conservative, and they are reasonable. And if we don't raise them, we're going to be in trouble. And I really do think that Councillor Wilson has done a very good job of getting the balance right in it. And I'm more than happy with it. And I hope the opposition see that on Tuesday. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor G. I take it you're not speaking on behalf of them, despite your position sat there. Yep, fine. Any other comments or questions on anything in that paper? Councillor France.
Sorry, I'm just looking at the cemetery fees there, and I just think that's a really nice gesture not to charge for burials of a stillborn or a child under 16. And I see that we're the only borough that does that, so I'd like to congratulate Chorley Council on that. I think that's a very nice thing to do. The parents are under enough grief at that time to have to find some additional costs. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions or points anybody wants to make? Again, I think just to reinforce the point, it's never a good time to put up charges, it's never a good time to put up costs, but at the end of the day, the council can't run at a loss, because ultimately then we'd be asking residents for more money constantly, and therefore this is a bit aimed at the people who use those services, particularly grey bins, for example. There is the choice of using them or not using them, but ultimately we are still quite low compared to most people, or as it's on the last item Councillor France pointed out, at the Lancashire average. So we will continue to strive to be as value for money as possible for our residents. Right, so the items 2 to 15, or paragraphs recommendations 2 to 15, which is 14 proposals, have been put forward by Councillor Wilson on block. Somebody happy to second those for me? Thank you, Councillor Lowe. All those in favour, please show. They are approved, thank you. And obviously that will now go out for consultation, so thank you for that. Right, we go forward to item 6, which is the equality objectives and equality strategy. Councillor Margaret France, pages 79 to 104.
Thank you, Chair. So you have this report in front of you. The purpose of it really is to refresh the equality objectives and strategy, which we are required to do every 4 years under the Equality Act of 2010. So it was last updated in 2020, and I think it was actually due December 2024, but we're close enough. So if you would look at paragraph 25, you'll see that there are 5 objectives, which largely speak for themselves, really. And unlike what's happening across the pond, it's nice to see that Chorley is standing up for its minority groups. So, so under the action plan, paragraph 16, if I can find it. So there will be an Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Board, Staff Equality Champions Network, and to renew the Equality Forum, to give that a new reinvention. The governance of this is going to be monitored by quarterly reports to the senior management team. And if you look at paragraph 91, where is it? I've lost it now. Is it page 91? I must stop abbreviating myself. I'm glad to see that there is no mandatory training for not just staff but also members of this council to have their Equality Training Act induction, and then it to be renewed from time to time. I think that's an important thing to do. I'm also pleased to see on this that we've made some allowance for health inequalities. You tend to think of protected characteristics and you forget about health inequalities. But the role of the social prescribing team now is embedded itself in the health inequalities programme. Yeah, I'm very pleased to present this document to you, and I'm very grateful for the efforts from Caroline and from Kieran Leonard for producing this excellent document. Thank you. If anybody's got any questions, happy to hear them.
Thank you, Councillor France. Anybody got any points or comments they wish to make on that report and that strategy? No, as Councillor France said, I think it's important that we get this progressed and get this out there, because it's a statement of intent for this council and for its officers and for its members and for the community as a whole. No comments on that, so the proposals are as detailed in paragraphs 2 and 3, proposed by Councillor France. We're happy to second those for me, please. Councillor Murray or Councillor Wilson, take your pick. And all those in favour, please show. Done. Thank you for that. That's passed. Item 7 is exclusion of public and press. One's already going. Anybody else wish to leave? They can do. Could somebody just second that for the records, please?